then just kind of dive through some of the proposals and the proposal kind of process, and then I guess the meat of this call is actually going to be not specific to the GnosisDAO, but just to the recent Gnosis Safe kind of DAO tool that we released, the SafeSnap plugin for Snapshot and the underlying DAO module. So we're going to go through and have a play with that today. I've set up an instance of it on Rinkeby where everyone can dive in and poke around and have some fun with it. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end where, I guess anything's fair game, but I guess the idea for the most part is to answer any questions people have about SafeSnap and the DAO module in general. So with that, I guess we'll kick things off. Again, if you have questions for the QA session at the end, then or Q&A session at the end, head over to that URL right there. And let's carry on then. So I guess just a quick kind of inspirational quote here. If we've learned one thing from the history of invention and discovery, it is that in the long run, and often in the short run, the most daring prophecies seem laughably conservative. I think that's really relevant because we, I guess, at Gnosis and in the Ethereum ecosystem, kind of often, it seems really pushing the boundaries, and I think there's a really great chance that these things that seem I don't know, outrageously optimistic or unachievable will be kind of, again, quite conservative and commonplace things in a relatively short amount of time. The GnosisDAO, I guess let's just talk briefly about it. I guess I should just read from the slide. It's equally important to decentralize both technical and governance layers for products in the Web3 ecosystem. So the mission of GnosisDAO is to successfully steward the Gnosis ecosystem. I guess that again speaks to the kind of core topic today that we'll get to at the end with the Gnosis SafeSnap plugin for Snapshot. This is kind of one step in that direction to kind of adding that decentralized kind of governance layer to the Gnosis Safe ecosystem. So after the initialization of the GnosisDAO, the plan is for it to have essentially effective control over 150,000 Ether and 8 million GNO tokens. And so true to the kind of roadmap, the GnosisDAO is attempting to use Gnosis products and bring decentralized governance to the Gnosis ecosystem. Again, the one kind of critical step in that is this new DAO module and SafeSnap plugin. But this is, I guess, the first of several opportunities that we have to really enable the Gnosis ecosystem to have kind of effective control over itself. Let's touch quickly on kind of what we've done so far, or what the kind of GnosisDAO has done so far in terms of GIPs. The first, we had a proposal for a one-time GNO Merkle drop to active GnosisDAO participants. This one actually failed to reach quorum. GIP2 has not gone to a vote yet, but there's still a proposal up for it on the forums, and this is for a Gnosis Safe token model. Well worth checking that one out. GIP3, should the GnosisDAO lower the quorum threshold required for yes votes, and this one passed. It reached quorum, and so it's effectively now lowered the quorum requirement for GnosisDAO. And when I say quorum here, I should be kind of clear. This is talking about the GNO-weighted voting on Snapshot, on the GnosisDAO Snapshot, and it's only referring to the yes votes. So yes votes have to reach a specific quorum, which I believe is now 3%. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And GIP4 is omitted because it kind of vanished and became GIP7 just because of a bit of a mishap in naming. GIP5, I guess GIP4, maybe that slot's still open. Someone can snag it with the GIP if they want to slot one in. GIP5 removed Gnosis Impact from the GnosisDAO governance process. So this was an experiment that we put in at the start when we kind of initialized the GnosisDAO. We had this little tool called Gnosis Impact, which essentially took information from prediction markets that were based around the proposal and rendered them as an informative tool. And we essentially just, this proposal proposed to get rid of it. It ended up passing. And the reason being that it's, with the current gas prices, it wasn't really yielding any usable information and was quite costly for everyone involved. So it's something that we'd like to experiment with again later. I'd like to see the community kind of propose that again at some point in future when there's a viable way for us to use it without kind of a guaranteed expense, or at least without the same kind of scale of guaranteed expense. GIP6 was to deploy Gnosis Auction. That one passed and is currently being worked on. GIP7, should GnosisDAO pay additional GNO rewards for LPing on SushiSwap? That one ended up failing, and I guess it did not reach quorum. And then the most recent one, enable LP voting on Snapshot, has not made it into phase 3 voting yet, but did look promising in the forums. So I imagine it'll go to phase 3. There's probably be a little bit of delay before it actually goes to phase 3 because we've just realized there's a more efficient way for us to tally votes across multiple LP tokens. And so we'll probably explore that before pushing it forward into phase 3. So yeah, that's I guess a quick overview of the GIPs so far. And just a couple of kind of metrics on those GIPs. Take a quick deep dive into just a handful of the proposals. So this one, should GnosisDAO launch a liquidity mining program for prediction markets using Gnosis conditional tokens? And actually, I think that we have some of the Chloris folks on the call here. So maybe you guys actually want to jump in and talk about it. Because this one was not created by anyone on the Gnosis team. But the summary is just, the GnosisDAO, or should the GnosisDAO launch a liquidity mining program for prediction markets using the Gnosis conditional tokens that would reward liquidity providers with GNO to incentivize a curated set of markets and thus boost the use of conditional tokens. If I see Clement on the call, and I thought I saw. Let me just check. I thought I saw Jimmy as well. Oh yeah, Jimmy, it looks like you're unmuted. If you want to talk briefly, because you posted this one, right? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. If you're not available, then no problem at all. All right. Looks like we got some audio issues, maybe. So we'll carry on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
can take over if Jimmy has an issue. Yeah, sorry to be late. We get limited to the 10 minutes. Wait 10 minutes.
No worries.
So yeah, on I think liquidity mining can really be what can kickstart prediction markets. So we have an issue of a chicken and the egg problem. There is not much liquidity, so there is not much traders. So there is not much trader, so there is not much fee, so there is not much liquidity. So I think to really solve this kind of chicken and egg problem, we should start by incentivizing providing liquidity. It should also automatically incentivize trading, because we will get the ability to trade with a slippage. We saw quite some traction with the presidential market. And I think there is way more potential than just than the presidential market. We could have markets on EIPs. You could have market on other world events. You could have market on sports, so intellectual sport or classic sports, video like gaming competition. I think there is a huge potential to get those prediction market, but we need a way to kind of like kickstart it. And we've seen that other projects have been quite successful by doing so using liquidity mining. We already saw SushiSwap in a few months going from nothing to one of the top 10 dApps, like in every chain, like on the top 10 dApps by the liquidity mining. We saw Uniswap also doing that. We saw Balancer also growing at a quite fast speed due to liquidity mining. I think we should always be aware that liquidity mining is not sustainable in the really long term, but I think it's a really efficient way to kickstart markets. And in this proposal, we will put some GNO for liquidity mining. I think initially it will mostly be on some open market, but the proposal is made to be generic. So it could be on some open market, it could be on some ERC20 position, which could be traded in classic markets. It could be Uniswap, SushiSwap, Balancer. And that will really kick off prediction markets. On the way to determine which market will be incentivized, at the Clearos team, we first provide some KNK incentive at the beginning, and they were really not specific to a market. And I think it was nice at that time, but we can do better, and we can specifically incentivize some specific market that we believe are likely to get trader attention, or even just attention, worldwide attention, due to the fact of like the interest of the data as you can predict. So I think it's better to redirect that to some specific markets. And on that, because we cannot make a GIP every time we want to incentivize a new market, we could have this really like fast track system to add allocation points. Allocation points which are similar to how Sushi is working, where they provide allocation points to different markets they want to incentivize. So on the simplified vote, which doesn't require quorum or doesn't require making a prediction market beforehand, to add or remove allocation point to some market, so we can, in a kind of agile manner, determine which market will get high liquidity, depending on which market are the most interesting for trader or for the information they provide. Yeah, I think that's a good summary of that. Or maybe, or probably, or why is there some revenue going back to the GnosisDAO? I think in the short term, we don't necessarily need to have some revenue going back to the GnosisDAO, as we can see, like for example, with Uniswap or Balancer, where they first start by liquidity mining and after they put some fee, because at the beginning we are really in an attract phase, where the goal is really to get a lot of users, and once you get a lot of users, once you get a lot of volume, it tends to be way easier to monetize. But like extracting fees is something when you already made it, I would say. So first we need to make it and have a huge amount of both liquidity and volume before we could charge some fees, which will go back to the GnosisDAO. On the fee, the GnosisDAO, prediction market, contrary to the Safe. So the Safe, I think it's really something we cannot get fees on because there is no effect of getting a lot of users. Like the Safe, they are already independent. While prediction market, they are more valuable if you go in a prediction market which has a lot of users. So there are networks effect for prediction markets, which means that you can put some side fees without losing all the users, as will happen with something like a Gnosis Safe.
Yeah.
So I think there is a potential for monetization, but it's like after. It's like a rich people problem. It's what you do when you already have a lot of users that you may want to try to monetize. And at the beginning, it's really about attracting users.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for the context, comment. I guess
pure improvisation, as I was expecting Jimmy to speak.
no. That's great. I appreciate you kind of jumping on the spot and giving me a good rundown on it. I guess it's a really interesting proposal to me. I would definitely encourage everyone here to go and check it out on the forums. I guess like to play devil's advocate here. The one thing that concerns me a little bit with this is that the automatic market makers for Omen, like the current conditional tokens automatic market maker contracts, are still quite dangerous for liquidity providers. As in, like they have a really high chance of kind of impermanent loss becoming very permanent loss once outcomes are known. And so I wonder if that's a problem that should be kind of better solved for before running this kind of liquidity mining kind of incentive program.
I think it's only an issue for really like casual liquidity providers, and I expect on average to be liquidity provider on average to be more like technically or economically literate maybe than traders, where trader it's more about finding what is going to happen and which percentage. For providing liquidity, it's quite more complex, I would say complex financial product for liquidity providers. And there is like all those articles which are really telling to remove the liquidity before the outcome is known. There is obviously the possibility to make some better thing, for example, which will remove the liquidity automatically. And I think on like to go on the opposite way, I don't say that Orin point is not valid, but I said like I'm putting the opposite point, which is that by providing a liquidity incentive, we can create some second layers. We can incentivize people to make some second layer solution, as we see in other projects where you have these kind of like farming aggregator like Yearn, Pickle, and all of those which could emerge due to the liquidity mining, and those kind of second layer solution could automatically pull out liquidity after a specific time, or after some maybe like some multi-sig decide that the event is likely to be known soon, so we should remove it. So I think it can be solved on the second layer. And having those incentive also to get this kind of second layer project where you give your LP token, and they collect some nodes, they remove the liquidity when they think that it's too dangerous, and that can actually be a way to solve this problem. It may seem simple. It may be you like pour some money in a problem and the problem will be solved. So it may seem a simple approach, but I think there is a decent chance of getting this second layer project working on it if you have this liquidity mining program.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really valid point. The potential for kind of second layer solutions to that liquidity provider issue is definitely more likely to be solved kind of externally if there's more people that have funds at risk. So yeah, great point. All right, so I guess we can move on from here. Again, I just encourage everyone to go check out the forums and weigh in on this proposal. It's a really interesting one for the GnosisDAO, and it's one of the first that I guess is actually kind of wanting the GnosisDAO to go and do something external as opposed to just tinkering with its own settings, which is obviously what we want the DAO to eventually start to do. So keep moving on. Just, I guess, wanted to give a quick overview of some of the kind of proposal specifics. So the GnosisDAO will allocate 120,000 GNO from the Treasury for the first 12 months. Sorry, this is for this proposal. Just some of the specifics. It wants the GnosisDAO to allocate 120,000 1,000 GNO from its treasury for the first 12 months to incentivize liquidity in conditional tokens based markets, and would kind of dynamically manage the GNO reward distributions by assigning allocation points. So this is what Clement just went over. So I might actually skip over the rest of this, because I think Clement already did a better overview than what I would give anyway. And yeah, I guess now is hopefully what people were here to see. We'll shift gears a little bit and jump into just a quick demo of the SafeSnap plugin for Snapshot. So I'm just going to change the window that I'm sharing. So I guess maybe before we dive too far into this, actually, I should switch back for just a second, because I've skipped one of Alex's beautiful slides. So to give a bit of context first, we announced this last week. We've got a whole bunch of kind of launch partners from around the DeFi ecosystem that have jumped on and essentially said, like, this is something that we sorely need. You know, we're trying to go through this process of progressive decentralization, and right now, most, I shouldn't say most, a good chunk of organizations are kind of using this pattern where they have a Gnosis Safe with some trusted community members as the owners, and then a snapshot instance where the community has voting power and would like to kind of influence the outcome of what the multi-sig owners do with the kind of DAO. And so what SafeSnap does is try to create a kind of a seamless pathway to progressive decentralization. So the same Gnosis Safe still controls the assets of the DAO, and the same snapshot instance is still where the community interacts with it. And all it does is kind of create a bridge between those two worlds, so that the snapshot instance can trustlessly kind of affect change on the Gnosis DAO, on the Gnosis Safe kind of base DAO. And that happens basically via a relay, an oracle that is this kind of escalation game based system. So for anyone that hasn't kind of dove deep into Omen, the oracle system is called reality.eth, and essentially plays this game theory based game where each time anyone can set the outcome, and anyone else can double the outcome or double the bond on the outcome to change it. And you keep doubling the bond until essentially one party gives up. And then you also have an option to defer to an arbitrator if the bond gets too high. So just, again, a little bit of background here. The Gnosis Safe is the most trusted platform to manage digital assets on Ethereum. Currently, around 20 billion worth of digital assets are secured in Gnosis Safes, and a large portion of that is from teams that run essentially decentralized protocols. So Yearn, Sushi, Synthetics, Balancer, MStable, just to name a few. SafeSnap enables decentralized execution of crypto governance proposals. So combining the Gnosis Safe with decentralized governance platforms like Snapshot, the SafeSnap module, or actually the SafeSnap plugin, connects to a DAO module that allows on-chain execution of off-chain votes. So from there, I'll go back to my other screen here, and we can actually dive in and take a look at it. I'm not keeping track of the questions here. If you guys have been asking any, I'll check in on those in a little bit. But in the meantime, let's jump over to our test snapshot instance. So this is live on Rikeby. If anyone wants to play with it, feel free to come and join me here. It's just snapshot.org/##Venus. And I called it that just because I'm using the Venus token that Baki Puba created a while back. It's a really neat token where you can send a zero value transaction to the token's address. I might just quickly drop the token's address into the Gnosis DAO channel here. so that if anyone wants to mint themselves some Venus, they can go right ahead. I'll drop the Etherscan link in as well. And yeah, sending just a zero value to that will trigger its payable function and mint you 1,000 Venus. And that's what you'll use for your vote weight in this test instance. So basically what we'd call the kind of GnosisDAO here, or it's kind of like avatar, is this Gnosis Safe. It has one owner currently, and that owner is an address that I'm fairly certain doesn't have a private key associated with it. You can't actually remove all of the owners from a safe. I just discovered the other day. So what we did instead was just set the only owner to this this unusable address. What it does have is a module. And so a module is a contract that you essentially enable in a safe, and it gets unrestricted access to call the safe's functions. And so if you want to kind of enable some kind of logic around that, then you implement the logic in a contract and you enable that contract. And so that's what we've done here. And we can open this one up over on Rinkaby as well on Etherscan, so you guys can check out the code for this contract. I'll drop that one into Discord here as well. And we won't dive into the code for this because it's probably a bit more detailed than we want to get into today. But essentially, what it allows us to do is take a question or the resolution of a question from reality.eth, and from that trigger a batch of transactions in a safe. So again, this safe has no owners, but it has one module installed, or I should say no usable owners and one module installed. The only way to control it right now is from our snapshot instance over here. So I guess to get a quick demonstration, I prepped this proposal earlier. It's already been through the initial stages of it, so we'll go and just execute this just to show what it actually does. Go back here and double check the balance of our Venus, 2,901. So this question is tied to, or this proposal is tied to this reality question, which is already resolved to yes. So now I can hit this execute proposal button. You probably don't see my MetaMask popping up, but it's there. I'm going to confirm it. And in a few seconds, our transaction should confirm. And then we should be able to see the change over on our Gnosis Safe. All right, so that transaction is confirmed. It will probably take a few seconds for it to actually make a change on the Gnosis Safe, but you can see here it's transferred 100 Venus tokens from our safe address to my address. And if we head over to the Gnosis Safe, we can see that our balance has been deducted. So we just triggered a transaction in the Gnosis Safe from Snapshot. If we look into the transaction history here, we can see a module transaction, and it gives us our same kind of transaction decoding that you normally get in other transactions. I was a little confused about that earlier today, wondering why these ones here did not have transaction decoding. And I think it turned out that it's because these were payable functions as opposed to function calls. And so now just to make things a little bit quicker for the rest of the demo and for while everyone's playing with it, currently have the timeout and the cooldown on this. One is the amount of time between each escalation on reality, and then the other is the amount of time after the reality question resolves before you can actually execute the transaction. They currently set to 5 minutes, so I'm going to set both of them to 3 minutes. Again, I prepped this one earlier, so we should be able to execute this proposal now to modify both of these modify both of these settings. I haven't actually tried one with 2 different transactions, so we'll see how this goes. But I think it should work. All right, so I think that will have done the first of the 2 transactions, and now I can execute the second transaction.
Okay. Kaza yaşandı. Babam biraz
So we
riskli
got
ve
someone.
annemin ayağı kırıldı. O pazartesi ameliyata gidecek. Ben hani çiziklerle Allah'tan başımı vurmuşum. İşte tomografim iyi çıktı Allah'tan. Sırtım ağrıyor, başım ağrıyor. Yani iyi kötü her şey yaşıyor. Her şey insanlar için. Bakalım bundan sonra da ne olacak? Çileyse de gül oynaya çekeriz ama sizden istediğim sadece duanızı eksik etmeyin.
There we go. Cool. All right, so we've executed both of our transactions here. And again, if we head back to the safe, we should see some more module transactions here that a change, calling a function on our DAO module. So just to change those variables. So now we'll go through and I guess quickly just try a new proposal. Just to make it an easy one, we will try just sending some wieners to someone. If someone wants to drop an Ethereum address in, then I'll do it to yours. Otherwise, I'll do it to mine. And what we're going to do here is basically there's a little star icon here. You will hit that. This gives you access to Snapshot's plugins. It's only available if the space actually has plugins installed. You're going to hit add, and here you'll start crafting your transactions. So we'll add a transaction. Our target address in this case is going to be the Venus token address. So we'll grab that, drop it in here. Our value is the Ether value of the transaction. So for this one, it's going to be 0. And then we want to include some data. So here I'm going to craft a transaction from the Venus ABI. So I'm going to grab this ABI, and this nifty little tool here that HashX has created, where I can jump in, paste in an ABI, pass it, and then grab their transaction, or you can grab the functions that I want to call and input each of the parameters. So we're going to, let me check Discord. Has anyone dropped in? All right, Ben, lucky winner. So I'm going to drop in Ben's address, and we're going to send him 100. And I guess we should convert this. Luckily, I already did it earlier. So we'll grab 100 tokens for Ben. And then here we have our transaction data. So we'll take this back over to Snapshot. We'll throw 0x in front of it, drop it in, and this is going to be a call function because our safe is calling it directly rather than a delegate call, because I'm not using something like the multi-sender contract. So we'll hit add, and that adds our transaction to our array of transactions. You can hit confirm now and save, and you can see that we've got our transaction lined up here. So I'll just add a little description in here as well. And I'll grab Ben's address again. Great. We'll do a start date of today, a few hours ago, and an end date of today in a few minutes' time. So I'll make it, what have we got, 38, so we'll go 41. That gives us 3 minutes to vote. If anyone wants to come and try to vote, then feel free. It'll be a quick turnaround time. We're good. So we'll publish this proposal, hit sign. The countdown is on for anyone who wants to come and join in the vote. And I'm just going to twiddle my thumbs for a few minutes, and I'll jump into the questions over here and see if we have any. Okay, I see someone asked, could we do a quick demonstration of how one would tie a safe transaction to the snapshot at the time of creation? So I guess that's what we're doing now. Although maybe it doesn't quite. I don't know, that question's a little bit ambiguous there in terms of like whoever asked it, what do you mean by at the time of creation?
It's all good. You've just done it. I posted this question right before you started this.
Oh, cool. Okay, nice. All right, so I guess, did I vote yet? No. So I'm going to go ahead and vote. If anyone else wants to vote, you totally should as well. Or if anyone else wants to come in and try to craft some transactions and make the safe do things, then you should totally do that as well. It's open. Anyone with a Weenus balance can create a proposal. I believe you have to have a minimum balance of 1 Weenus to create a proposal, and then you need to have had Weenus on this block in order to cast a vote in this particular proposal. So we have 1 more minute of pleasant waiting and my lovely monologue before we can actually go and execute. So obviously this is just kind of snapshots, regular process where you can vote up until the end date. Once this timeout completes, then obviously you can't vote in the snapshot proposal anymore, and at that you'll see this DAO module change, although I may need to refresh the screen. And it will give us an option to create the question over on reality so that we can then go and resolve it. Just going to close this one up because we don't need that anymore. We're just waiting for this last minute to tick over. Perfect. So I'll just do a quick refresh. And so now we can request execution. And what this is going to do is create a question over on reality. Again, anyone can play the escalation game. This DAO module has a timeout of 3 minutes. So we can should be able to get the question timeout. Here we go. So it's 180, it's in seconds. And then it also has, what's the cooldown? Oh, right there. Yeah. So we've got timeout and cooldown, both are set to 180 right now. That's the variables that we just set earlier. And that is essentially the window of time that you have to go and set the answer or bump the answer up after someone has set it. It also has a minimum bond here, which is, I believe, 0.1 Weenus. So by default, it's going to tell you to put 0.01 in the interface. You'll want to bump that up to at least 0.1 if you want the proposal to actually be executable. Since this resolved to yes, because I had more Weenus than this guy, I'm going to go ahead and resolve it to yes. If anyone wants to challenge me, then feel free to double my bond. But I warn you, I have lots of rank B ether. So we've got, I've just posted the transaction to confirm the answer. That's just should have confirmed by now. And then there's a 3-minute cooldown again. Between, I guess it hasn't gone on chain yet. Soon. 3-minute cooldown where anyone else can double the bond. And then after that, another 3-minute cooldown to post the, before you can actually execute the transaction. And that second 3-minute cooldown is actually to give the Gnosis safe signers an opportunity to mark a malicious proposal as invalid. In this case, because there is no valid multi-sig signers, the second time out is kind of redundant. So we could potentially create a proposal to remove it, because once it's resolved to yes in the once it's resolved to yes in reality, then there's not really any way to stop it quickly. The DAO could mark it as invalid itself, but you'd have to get another proposal through. So presumably this one would get executed beforehand. In the meantime, let's try refreshing again and see if... Cool, so deadline is in 1 minute. At that point, you should see everything change here again. For the time being, if there is a kind of question that you double the bond on, you can always jump over, follow this link to jump over to the reality question. I think at some point we'd like to pull data into this module as well, so it actually tells you what the current answer is and what the current bond is. But that's, I guess, an improvement for a later version. Let's see how we go. Oh, we've got a fun little countdown now. I see no one's challenged it, so hopefully that won't happen and we can continue on with the demo. I am really keen to see what actually happens to the DAO now, because like the timeout is set short enough to be useful for a demo, but not at all useful for like anything secure. In production, you'd obviously want these timeouts to be much longer, in the order of probably 24 to 48 hours for your question cooldown, and then for the timeout, probably another 24 hours, just to make sure there's ample opportunity for people to see when the answer's been changed, and kind of mobilize capital to double the bond, and then also to give ample time for any multi-sig signers, if they're there, to respond. So this one works in this scenario, but it's not very useful for anything with real value in it. So anyway, our answer is final now, so I should be able to refresh, and it'll still tell me that we're waiting on a response, just because we're waiting for the cooldown now. So we kind of need to wait another few minutes. I should have brought some, I don't know, some fun waiting music, maybe the Jeopardy music or something, to fill the awkward silences. In the meantime, I guess we can dive into this tool here. So Banteg from Yarn created this really neat tool for creating kind of much more complex call data that you could kind of feed into your safe. This was not originally intended for use with the SafeSnap application, but I think it's going to prove to be a really useful tool for generating the kinds of things that I generated here. Like this was for a really, really simple interaction, but if you're wanting to chain together a sequence of kind of more complex interactions, then this tool would get really, really cumbersome to use. And so something like this Safe Ape transaction builder would be really, really useful. I think eventually we'd like to create some more user-friendly interface for this kind of thing. But for the time being, it's probably a fairly technical tool, no matter which route you go, or a fairly technical process to actually getting the right transaction data, and then also being able to validate the transaction data. So there's still some kind of social trust involved in that for a lot of voters, I imagine. The Safe does a pretty good job of decoding data, but I mean, again, this is probably not something that most people can intuitively look at and figure out what it's actually doing. It takes a little bit of work to figure out what the function calls mean. So yeah, a good target for future improvements on this process is one, creating tools for us to more easily, or for users to more easily kind of generate more complex transaction data to feed into this, and then two, tools to make it easier to decipher the transaction data in proposals here and in the safe itself. But again, I'm always very impressed with the work the safe team's done so far in making these things reasonably interpretable, particularly in contracts that it knows something about. All right, that should have been long enough of me ranting. So we'll quit the monologue and we'll get back to the main event. Now we've got our opportunity to execute a proposal. So maybe I'll leave this one for someone else to do, because you guys have already seen me do that twice. Cool for someone else to have a crack at it. Ben, since it's sending tokens to you, maybe you want to try to execute it. But yeah, now you guys have seen the kind of full flow, albeit not in the right order, from creating a proposal all the way through to executing, since we executed a few at the start. So I guess, yeah, maybe I'll open it up to questions again. I don't see any more in the Google Slides, but if anyone wants to unmute and ask any questions, then I'm all for it. Otherwise, we can wrap it up. I guess I'll take the resounding silence as we have answered everyone's questions sufficiently. And
I have some question. Is there an easy way to execute multiple transactions within one proposal?
Yeah. So I didn't
multiple calls within one proposal.
Yeah. So here, if we go and create a new proposal, essentially each time you hit add here, you're creating a transaction. So let's replicate the transaction that we created last time. We'll send Ben 100 Venus tokens. And then say we wanted to replicate that again. I need to go back to our API. I don't know. Oh, beautiful. So I've already got that set up. So I've added one transaction there. If I want to add another, then I just hit add again, and we can do the exact same thing. Send Ben another 100 Venus tokens. And so now we have two transactions in our batch. And so you'll have to execute these as separate transactions from the safe, but you can approve them both with one proposal. And so you can make an arbitrary number of transactions added into this kind of array of transactions. And what we'd probably recommend doing if you kind of have the capacity is actually to craft each one of these individual transactions as a multi-send transaction, or as using the kind of transaction builder in the Gnosis safe. So that way you can execute as much as possible within the context of one transaction. And in doing so, kind of batch even more stuff into one proposal. The reason that we did it the way that we did here is to kind of allow for both ways of batching, because necessarily there's some interactions that can't happen kind of synchronously, can't happen within the context of one transaction. And so this way you can still approve transactions that have to happen in different blocks within one proposal.
And if one call is not executable at some point, what happened to it? Like, for example, imagine you make a DAO and he's gonna want to trade on.
Transaction, like the lower nonce has to succeed to progress on to the next knot. So if you have something in this batch of transactions that will not ever succeed for whatever reason, then you'll need to do a new proposal.
And is there a maximum time to execute something? Again, I'm taking the example of a DAO which wants to trade. If I approve, and I have traded, but between the time the proposal is made, the price has changed, so the swap will be invalid. As a DAO, I would want this swap to expire after some time. I don't want someone to call it 2 years after when the price has changed and now it becomes valid. So
right.
Expiration. Okay.
Yeah. So this is again in seconds, and so I think it's set to 1 week right now, but there's a settable function that the DAO can call and choose its own expiry date. And then also it can invalidate previously passed questions, or it can invalidate questions. So if there's a case like that where for whatever reason there's something that hasn't been executed and it wants to really make sure that it never gets executed in future, then it can invalidate it. There is a case here where if the expiration is changed at a later date and an answer that was previously outside of the expiration window and executed again. And so that's where explicitly marking them as invalid is probably a better way of ensuring that things don't get executed in future. And then in terms of DAOs doing swaps, as seems to be the case with most multi-sigs, it's probably good to set the parameters of that swap so that it will not be based on timing, because DAOs are pretty bad at being precise with timing. So you kind of just want to buy it, do your trade or do your swap at whatever the current market price is, as opposed to at some, within some specific bound. And I guess,
can you explain further that? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, most of the automatic market makers have, when you create a transaction, you'll have a maximum amount of slippage that you tolerate, or you'll have, in terms of the price that you get compared to the price that you kind of requested or you were quoted. And then I think often they'll have a sort of timeout window as well. And so as you can't be certain on when this transaction will actually be executable, because there's some variable time in between, particularly with the escalation game that could, in this case, it could be over in 3 minutes, but it could also be, a day if the escalation goes on long enough. And so if you can set the kind of parameters to your trade transactions, to your swap transactions, to be to not be concerned with slippage, essentially, and not have an expiration date or an expiration time, then you're more likely to actually have those transactions succeed. Obviously, there's a trade-off there, because they may actually create some MEV if someone is, I guess, front running that trade or is able to kind of order the blocks. So there may be some risk in having those parameters set outside of some thresholds. But yeah, I think you would necessarily, as a DAO, need to have some tolerance for slippage if you're trying to execute those kind of transactions.
Yeah, these are all creating issues.
Yeah.
But how are you defining? How are you defining? Was that EMV, MVE? What was that?
MVV, minor extractable value. So it's just if you had a swap transaction that was open to any amount of slippage, then it would be a miner who could order the sequence of transactions, could insert a transaction before your trade and create an outrageous amount of slippage for you. So you probably don't want to have it, being open to any amount of slippage, but you do need so that the slippage is wide enough, you tolerate enough slippage that it doesn't have to be really precisely timed.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. You need to optimize it actually being executed versus it being front run.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
But for this we have Gnosis protocol, maybe for another call. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like Gnosis makes the most sense for DAOs or any kind of slow-moving organization to make those kind of trades, because you won't have that same kind of exposure.
What's the feature there?
Stefan, do you want to dive into that?
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure if that's an appropriate question now, but I thought I'd ask since
it's
you
fine.
mentioned it.
Basically, you can define a transaction and then also with bigger slippage, and at the time of execution, once everyone approved or once the proposal goes through, then there is an external solver which will try to find the best possible routing path similar to 1inch. And because of this is like even if you define a high slippage, assuming that the solver works, you will still get a very good price.
Great, thank you.
No worries. All right, cool. So I think we can probably call it a day then. Again, I guess thanks everyone for joining in, checking out the community call. If you've got any questions about the GnosisDAO, about any of the Gnosis products, or about the SafeSnap integration with Snapshot and the DAO module that kind of underlies it, then yeah, feel free to reach out in our Discord server here, and we'll hopefully have an answer for you. Cool. Thanks everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks. It's really interesting stuff.
Cheers.
Cheers, Aaron.